We'll start off tonight's North Highlands Recreation Park District meeting for August 12th. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Terry?
Director Hardy.
Aye.
Director Reynolds.
Aye.
Director Ballard.
Aye.
Chairperson Williams.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0 with 1 absent.
Chairperson's report, I have nothing this time, only fact because we got too much on tonight's agenda. I put mine until next week, or next month. For comments from other fellow board members. Ms. Crystal, you had your hand up first.
I'm excited that our students are going back to school. Summer is over. Sending positive vibes to the parents and students that we're going to have a wonderful, fantastic, safe year. The Sacramento County Children's Coalition, Sac State's Institute for Social Research, and the Child Abuse Prevention Center, they're having listening sessions. The one for District 3 is tomorrow from 4:30 to 6. It would have been great if we were live on social media because then they could get the information. But by the time it gets posted, who knows if we'll see it. It'll probably be passed. And then Sunday, we're going to be at Joyce Park from 11 to 1 with County Supervisor Desmond. Super excited about that opportunity. I'm so glad Sarah was able to work it out with their chief of staff to get a facility or park. That's what I'm talking about, that real partnership and collaboration. Just if something wasn't an option, what could be possible? So I really appreciate just the work of the team to make it happen. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, if you're getting all of these emails, but there is a scholarship for the Special District Leadership Foundation for board members to gain some training and experience. So I hope that my colleagues are looking into that scholarship so we can apply and get some of our time compensated or covered, so it's not, we're not using district budget funds. We can get some free stuff. And then, again, I really hope that there's a way we can put it on the agenda to bring back virtual meetings. Just because we're at this place doesn't mean our community is there. And I think, again, we continue to engage and allow live feed, ability for people to watch live or comment live. It would be amazing. And then it's right there, live and direct. And then interested to just learn, how do new programs, or what's the process for like new organizations or new community partners that want to host or do something? What's the process to get them using sites or facilities? But I'm grateful to be here today with you all, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to number 4. Reports from standing committees. Well, 2 things here. Since Alan Metre, he resigned a few months ago, I took over for his position on the budget, finance, and audit, and then the personnel and policy. What I'd like to do is assign Max to the personnel and policy part and leave me on the budget, finance, and audit, only due to the fact that I've been here for a few years. I've been through a few budgets that we've had, so I have a good understanding instead of Crystal by herself and then either, I give the experience of going through these. So I'm going to stay on as that part until December, and then we will vote like we do on all the other ones for next year.
Can you repeat that?
The chair will make the assignments in December.
Right.
Right, there's no vote.
I said vote.
And also, I think you meant Lottie, not Max.
The hair's got me noticed, yeah. Melania, you're taking over the personnel and policies, and I'm just going to stay on the budget part of it.
Are you going to make the chairperson?
Yeah.
I might as well just stay as chairperson.
No, I mean,
We'll make,
So removing that?
we'll put Max as the chairperson. Good question.
So
And
it's
then
maybe Max
come
and Blod.
December, we'll redo everything.
So Max and Blod for personnel and policy.
Yes, ma'am. And then it'll be me on the budgets. Okay, 6, administrator report. Larry.
I am, since I think I've given you enough information on the miscellaneous board updates, I want to just touch on those just a little bit. Just a reminder, we've completed everything we need to do for Prop 68 park grant for Streetsville Park. Everything's been turned in. We got a notice about a week and a half ago.
Sierra Creek Park?
Yes. We got a notice from the state parks
Street.
that all our application was complete, and they told us we will hear from the state within the first part of September whether our grant, we will be a grant recipient. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we are. I'm going to pull my mask down so I'm fogging up my glasses. Also, too, maybe this isn't the right title, but I call it Board Goal and Project Setting Workshop. But the idea is we have a tremendous number of projects, and I think we might be adding some more in this fiscal year, carrying over into the following fiscal year, and some of them might even go beyond that, like Sierra Creek Park if we get it. I would like to have a board workshop where we can prioritize all the projects and put them on a timeline so that the board has an idea, a general idea of when they'll start, when they'll be completed, and I think that'll be good, and then we can put that on the district's website so the public knows what we'll be doing, when we'll be doing, and any impacts that it has with any of the neighborhoods. We want to give them a heads up. A question I had with one of the directors was that should this be a special board meeting, or can we add it to the September board meeting? I think we can do it in an hour, and I know I don't want to intrude on everybody's time by scheduling a second meeting just for this, but I'll leave it up to the board. If you want to just let me know if you have a preference for a special board meeting. The thing to keep in mind, we have a holiday coming up. We have this next month, the board meeting will be earlier in September than it was in August, so we do have a limited amount of time to schedule that. And we also need to schedule 2 or 3 committee meetings as well between now and September, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. Next item is September board agenda. I just want to give you a sampling of some of the things we have on next month's agenda. We talked about this with the board before, inviting Fulton El Camino Police Chief Brown to come to our board and share with us about the police services that he is contracted with to provide for our district. The district scholarship program recommendation, an employee vacation cap hours policy. We're going to be coming back to the board, and we need to go to the committee first to talk about revising that policy. District refund policy, we also have a different committee that we need to bring in to talk about that as well, but then we'll bring that back to the September board meeting. And also, we have had plaques made for the 3 previous board members who served on this district, Alan Montre, Diane Richards, and Pedro Marquez. And we've reached out to them, and we've heard from 2 of the 3 so far. They will be here in September for the board to recognize their years of service and dedication to the community. Also, and this will involve at some point with Pat and Crystal, we have the 2020-21 annual district audit. We have an audit performed every year on the district's finances. It is scheduled for September 1 through 3rd. Last year they did it remotely, and I think it took 3 to 4 weeks, didn't it, Terry?
Yes.
It took forever to do it remotely. We're still waiting for an answer whether they're going to come into our office or if they're going to do it remotely again. But anyway, it's scheduled for the first week of September. And that is, the district went out and did we didn't do a bid, but we actually went out and solicited different accounting firms, and the board selected CLA, Clifton, Larson, and Allen LLP, and they will be conducting the next 3 years audit for the district. Also, as some of you may have heard me say that the County Board of Supervisors have provided our district with a framed resolution. I saw a picture of it today. We didn't get it because unfortunately when Sarah went to go pick it up at county offices, at Supervisor Frost's office, the security guard wouldn't let her go up there. And we found out later on that he should have let her go right up. So we're going to pick it up tomorrow or early next week, but it's a beautiful, she took a picture of it and said it's a beautiful resolution. And that is for the distance learning program that the NHRPD awarded our district early in the summer. And lastly, Crystal mentioned about Supervisor Desmond's event at Streetscape Park this coming Sunday from 11 to 1 o'clock. And also, too, there will be a vaccine trailer on site as well, and some information booths. And just as a side note, Sarah has been working with the county, Sarah? To use the community center as a vaccination clinic for up to 6 dates. And that's just, they're working the details out. As soon as we find out, I'll notify the board and let you know what's going on. So that is it for the miscellaneous board updates. If you have any questions?
Vote?
Not a question, but I do want to address the strategic planning session. And I know you and I got a chance to talk about this in a little more detail. I would like to ask my fellow board members that we actually kind of dedicate some aside time outside of the standard board meeting where we're doing this normal people's business. Because I don't really think an hour may be enough. We've got 4 folks out of the 5 on this board. It will be our first time going through this type of exercise with the board, so I would like to have more time, both with my colleagues and to understand how we actually plan out our goals, our strategies, our tactics, how we look in the partnership, all of that kind of stuff. So I know I have a lot of questions that are probably going to exceed an hour's worth of time. So I would ask for my fellow board members' support on setting aside a special work session to do that work.
Okay. And I can reach out to the board and find out what the board thinks. It's not on there for a vote. It isn't going to require one for what we need to do. I just do want to remind the board that we have a short window between this board meeting and the next board meeting, so that will be 3 committee meetings and a special board meeting to squeeze in a 3.5-week period of time. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to you and I'll give you the dates for the committee meetings, and then because I'm going to talk about those later on, and then I'll give you some different dates that could be a special board meeting, and we'll see if that works out for the majority of the board.
Now, if it doesn't, and 2 of the 5 are willing to meet and have a meeting, how does that work? Or 3 of the 5 are available to meet to guide them?
I believe that's the Pat chairman gets to make that decision if he wants to go ahead and run the meeting with, because we could say all 5 could say they could make the meeting, and somebody like Max and I could be ill, and you have less than 5. As long as we have no less than 3. But if you like, I'll let me work on that tomorrow, get some dates out to you, and take a look at it and see if we can make it work.
Please do.
That concludes my report.
I have a question. Is there a timeline of when board members should submit items that we would like placed on the agenda for review? Like, we need to get it in 3 weeks before the meeting? Like, what is the direction or instruction on that?
We do not have a policy on that, but I'll tell you from a practical point of view that, as you can see, and this is something new we're trying to do, is every board meeting to kind of give you a snapshot of what the next board meeting looks like. Again, we could be likely adding some more items to the agenda. We could be deleting some items from the agenda, but just to give you an idea so you can gauge what how full the agenda is. But typically, no less than 2 weeks, because we have to start writing the reports and putting things together. And if we wait too long, too close to it, we actually have the agenda ready to go usually about midweek before we send it on that Friday. And then we use that last couple of days just to go through, proofread, make sure we didn't miss something. But sometimes if we were to add an item when we've already completed that process, that could change the layout on the agenda. It could, putting one more thing could change the page and move things all around. It's not possible to deal with, but the answer to your question is generally at least 2 weeks in advance. Earlier, if you know ahead of time, if you have a speaker or somebody that you'd like to bring in, the sooner we can do that, and I could request materials from that person so we can include it in the packet, that sort of thing.
And then what determines, like, Bo just spoke and asked for this, and it doesn't require a vote. Like, what determines For example, if I wanted to bring up the topic about the virtual meetings, or at least offering that opportunity, even if it's just recorded for our personal use or our use, do I need another board member to agree to that to be placed on the agenda?
No, what I would generally ask you to do is contact me first,
Okay.
and because probably 99% of the time we're going to be able to work that out. But as I told you before, we had planned to come back in early fall with that topic, to discuss that topic matter. And we just had some discussions earlier today about, again, trying to reach out to the districts to find out what they're doing. And it's getting to be a little bit of a challenge. But we, you know, again, it's possible we may be able, if we have the information, include at September's meeting. But the answer to your question is, just you know, generally give me a call, give me a heads up first, make sure that maybe I added 3 more agenda items and squeeze one more, and maybe we have to bump something else out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any others? We'll go rep report, Ms. Sarah.
I don't really have much to add to my report. I will give name to our new office assistant, but Christine Mesros was selected as our new office assistant. Given the length of today's meeting, we opted to bring her in to introduce her at the next board meeting. So she started this week. She's been great, and we're looking forward to having her around. So I'll take questions if there are any.
I got it. Go ahead, Bill.
I saw on so first of all, I've noticed more posting on our Facebook page. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it is getting through to me. So I don't know if you've added extra boosters or what's that. So
It's just kind of what we have time for.
okay,
So if we have free time, we're putting it towards that.
okay.
It's not free time, but you get.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So please continue to do that. But one of the updates that I saw was about expansion of the after-school program. And so I want to know kind of what's the process? Like, is it something that the school district reaches out to us and we see if we have the staff and availability, or is it we are actually actively reaching out to some of these schools, or so kind of tell me kind of how we expand those programs.
So we didn't expand the program at all. It's the expanded learning program. So that's a grant that Twin Rivers Unified School District gets, and then they contract out different school sites to different organizations, and they take it based upon what they can staff, and RFP goes out. So then we bid on Ridge Point, which is typically the only school we bid on because we have the MOU in the gym. Plus our staffing is, we can only take on so much, so adding another school would be a challenge without an additional full-time staff member, if I can say that. I don't know, but that would be a challenge. I did say it. We can only have so much in the gym as well, so if we have 48 students with the expanded learning program, if we receive that RFP, which we did, we over-enroll by 50 to 55, and then whatever we can take on the paid side is what we will. So we typically see about 75 to 80 students at Ridge Point, which taking any more would be a challenge from a ratio standpoint and kind of what we were allotted as far as staff and salaries go through the grant.
And what does that grant include? Does it include an after-school meal? Does it include a certain dollar amount for recreation activities per student that's enrolled? Like, what does the grant dollars cover for a student?
They contract us for the number of students they pay per student. And they set the number of students for that school. And it includes, we use that money to pay for staff, and 90% of it goes towards the grant. The remaining 10% goes towards administrative costs, and that's how we use it. The school provides supplemental supper. They're also going to do a send-home snack, I think. We're still waiting on information from them, but it's basically, here's the lump sum. We're contracted, we have to hit all of our marks. There's 12 quality assurance steps. And we utilize the budget for mostly staff.
Okay. And last question. new day, new time, even though it's been 18 months or so that we've been in this pandemic. Are there any additional like changes or additions due to the pandemic to this program, whether it's a mental health component or a physical health component, like how are we kind of helping students through? Is there any additional elements added to help students through these difficult times?
The 12 quality standards hits all those marks, and ever since I've been involved in the program, those are the 12 standards we use. It's based upon what Twin Rivers gives us. So there's homework, physical enrichment, and then enrichment, which includes an educational element.
So if I could just jump in there, Bo, just so you know, the state and the school district set what the conditions of the program. And I just want to touch base on what Sarah mentioned too, just so it's very clear. She mentioned 10% administrative costs.
Yeah, I know.
We've been burying that back into staff for years. So this program, the district makes zero money on this program. We reinvest everything back into the program. And Sarah mentioned there's a paid side component to the program. So the school district sets the number of students that the grant can take, and it's different for every school. I believe that the school next door to us is 80.
No, they have 109. last time I
109,
checked.
but the school district sets those numbers. And so with this paid side, which is something we've had for probably since Scott ran the program many years ago. And what that paid side is, you would not know the difference between the kids who were there under the paid, or excuse me, the paid program. They pay the district, but it's a very minimal fee. And then the other side comes from the grant, the program grant, and that allows us to take more kids that way. And we priced it so that it's ridiculously cheap, so more families can afford to go. But Sarah, typically, what is your wait list on this program?
So we take 48, we over-enroll to 55 to hit attendance standards, because we have to have 90% attendance throughout the entire month. But last time I checked, we had 120 plus on the entire list. So minus 55, that leaves you with 75 kids on the wait list. So we've reached out to all of them. And hopefully, we've gotten several already on the paid side.
And Sarah, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the school district establishes the criteria of what kids get into the program. We don't pick those.
We do not. So
We
they
don't
do
pick the
prioritize some of the students based upon certain factors. I mentioned it in the report here, but homeless foster care students, siblings. So if my brother got in and I'm sitting there on the wait list, okay, we automatically need to include brother. And then overflow students from other schools. That has never taken place in my time here. And that would be very rare considering COVID time, so I'm not sure. That's just past prioritization merits.
And just a little background on why I asked the question about the additional components in light of COVID. There are lots of dollars coming down the pipeline and dollars that have already landed. There are also a lot of listening sessions, community involvement sessions where I hope the invitation is sincere, that they want a more participatory budgeting process this time around. When the CARES dollars first came in, it was hitting the ground. We had to respond quickly, but there were some things that there were some areas of community need that were grossly overlooked. And the county is trying to do something more. Not only the county, the city, and the school districts are trying to do more of listening to the community. So if there is a need, if we're saying, hey, we would love to do this, all we need is, more funding to hire more staff, and this is going to help us to be more effective in our community and help our community heal through this process, then this is the area where we need to begin to have those conversations and then to go out and to bring those into other decision-making bodies. And so I'm always, especially until we make it out of and we're completely healed as a community, I'm going to be looking at if there are additional needs that this community needs in light of the virus and how we are speaking truth to power to decision makers. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Did you have one?
No.
I do. Just wondering, I'll ask, how is Monday Open Gym going?
Great,
Yeah.
really great. Really
How much is
great.
it? $3?
$3.
For 2 hours?
On average, how many people do we have?
On average, we have about 9 to 10, which is significantly higher than we had prior to COVID. Actually, it's probably 7 to 10, give or take. But we've had the highest number, I think, is 13 we have registered, so it's doing really well.
And what's the age cap?
8 to 17,
And
or 9 to 17, excuse me.
Is there an opportunity to expand the age for older people to, or is it adult staff that are there to supervise?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of mentorship and having older, we had some American River College basketball students wanting to kind of support and still, get some activity. So just wondering, is it just close to folks that are coming to actually pay and participate, or can those older people come and
No, they need to be fingerprinted and vetted through us. So they would have to go through an entire volunteer packet, be fingerprinted, because you're dealing with youth. That's pretty standard across the board.
Well, I meant like opening the program to them for them to play. So for example, if a high school student is 18, but he's still in high school, can he still participate, or is 17 because it's 17? It doesn't matter if you're in school or not.
You gotta be under 18.
Under 18.
Yeah, I just want to add to that too. We want to be very careful of mixing young kids and older kids because, one, if there's something about doing a mentorship, that can be a whole separate program. But when you have open gym, you'll have typically the older kids and the young adults take over, and the young kids get pushed off the court, or you get the young kids playing with the older kids, and that usually doesn't work out too well because it can be a physical game. So I would say that two things we look at. One is that you could look at a night where it could be just adults. You have the same age group that Sarah mentioned as a possible night, but then you also maybe could have some sort of mentorship instruction kind of thing where people really maybe want to come and have somebody kind of, show them how to play the game other than going out there and having elbows flying all around the court out there.
How do we decide? I saw the list of upcoming activities and events. Is there something that the board members can suggest ideas like a adult situation or adult volleyball game or adult league or adult anything, or just different populations that we can
Well,
make?
We do have adult volleyball.
Certainly, again, I think that the best way to approach that is to pick up the phone and in this case give Sarah a call because she, again, we have a budget. The gyms are only available at certain times. It's better to, it's fine to suggest those things, and she might tell you that, yeah, we have looked at that, or we've tried it before and it hasn't been successful, or it might say, hey, that's a good idea, let me check and see if we have the funds to run that sort of program.
And my last comment is just super kudos to the summer program, the kids summer camp. My daughter had the opportunity, and our cousin had the opportunity to attend. Her cousin got the high five award.
High five award, yes.
They were so excited, and I just wanted to say the environment was welcoming. The staff, when I would drop my daughter off, were very approachable, very helpful. So I just wanted to just give a shout out to the need that a kids camp is. I do want to say though, out of the working, I don't make much. So the 135 and 140 was expensive. And I was looking for scholarships too. I was asking family members, like, who got fives on this camp? So my daughter could go back, and she really wanted to do the last week of talent. But we were like, school clothes or camp.
Right.
So I just want to let y'all know, I know it's more than just me. There are community members that could benefit from that program if there was a way to subsidize or to reduce it. And so that's why I'm super excited that on the agenda is the scholarship program and that there's just the opportunity to kind of support our families in this capacity and need. So thank you so much for offering the summer kids camp.
So two things are coming to you. One is, as we mentioned before, is the scholarship program is going to be coming back to you here shortly. The second one is something that Sarah and I have been working on for a while, and it's really going to require the district to take a different approach, which actually I support. I think it's a good idea. We have some programs that are designed to be subsidized. We have some programs that, by their very nature, they are subsidized. And then we have some programs that are not subsidized. But what we've been working on is, and we want to come back to the board in the very near future, is looking at all the programs and services we offer, maybe putting them categories of subsidized amount, like, and I'll make this up because this is not what we're recommending, but it could be youth programs are subsidized at the 20% level. So if the cost is $100, then they would be charged $80, and then the district through its reserve program could be offsetting that cost. And this is not, as you know, this is not a wealthy community, and there's a lot of kids that and families that would like to participate more than they do, but it's very difficult. And I think our pricing structure is about as low as you're going to find it. But I mean, because it's basically cost covered, but we do subsidize a lot of programs. And one of the things that we, again, we don't know if the swim team program is coming back or not until we get actually access to a pool next year. But that program was heavily subsidized. And I think it's in the board's best interest and staff's best interest to come up with a policy on what that subsidized rate will be and look at everything that we do. And we think we have the capability of actually making some real inroads on how we can help get more people to be able to get involved. So that's coming back to you. I don't want to tell you it's next month because it's requiring a little bit of work and some thought to make sure that it makes sense and also that it's affordable.
Okay. So before we leave off this topic, I don't know if what I'm about to say is going to fall under the bucket that you just mentioned or it will be something else. But Sarah, so for example, I would like to, for the month of September, I'll sponsor 10 entry fees per Monday for the 4 Mondays in September, right? So we're talking $120, right? Now, my question to you was, would it be effective to use it as some kind of award or drive, if you have 100% attendance for the month of September, or if you get this grade on your first test, then you get a little ticket or a token, and this is for free gym. So I don't know if that would fall under, no, it wouldn't, now that I think about it, because this would be outside funding instead of the actual board funding and coming directly out of the budget. So would something like that be helpful to your students?
Potentially, yeah. I could see that happening. We have received donations like that in the past, and we've put it out on our social outlets, and some have picked up and some have not. But I think I'd have to look. I don't see that being a problem for gifts of.
I think we're doing it already. I know we've done it this summer already.
But you mean for like the after-school program?
Well, it would be up for your discretion. I would put $120, but I would like to see it specifically go towards the $3 gym fees.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
And for something like this, which is kind of outside of the district's program, contact Sarah directly, tell her what you have an idea, and let her come back to you with some ideas and recommendations, and let's try it that way.
Right, and I think that this could maybe be the testing ground to, we talked about before, a scholarship fund that is not the subsidies from this. If we went down Watt and solicited Watt business people, I know you talked about that before, like that kind of model of a bucket of funds where a community is actually putting in a few coins to actually help grow the
That's what's coming back to you with the scholarship program.
So then help me in my mind. So there is the process of which we take the budget dollars and we look at what we're going to subsidize. There's also a bucket or pocket of money that we will solicit community members to invest in. Those are two different processes, correct?
Right. So just for a kind of a clarification, the scholarship program would be completely outside the traditional district budgeting program. Sarah's budget, if it was all just strictly recreation, it would be totally outside of that, and that would be based on whatever means we come up with for generating the scholarship funds, and there'll be a policy attached to that. In general, the old policy was we had a certain amount of funds. There was criteria established of how the funds could be used, and then families could come in and make a request to use those scholarship funds. I think what you're going to see coming back is a model sort of like that, but one that's going to be one where we hope we generate a lot more money than what we have in the past, because I mean, we tied in the old soda machine, whatever money we got in the soda machine to go into there, and it wasn't worth the time or effort. So we want to kind of shoot big and generate some money so families could actually do both. They could be the recipient of a subsidized program rate, but also be a recipient of scholarship funds.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? All right, now we'll go to park and facilities. Scott?
Outside my written report, I just have one thing to add that came up after the packet was put together. After a very long wait, the messaging board will be installed next Tuesday. We'll undergo some training on how to operate it, and we'll be seeing messages on that board hopefully by the end of next week. So we're excited about that. Have to answer any questions you might have.
See, it's the first time we've been tagged in a while. Like it just,
Something to that extent, yeah.
yeah, that was,
We're pretty good about catching that and getting rid of it quickly.
they put their names out there on who they are.
Is that information shared with sheriffs or folks in El Camino, like to document the tagging?
We do, yeah.
Scott, how was the fire started at Freedom Park?
It looked as if there were individuals that were either, I mean, I can't say it was for warmth because it's been so darn hot even in the evening.
Right.
I think it was probably just a couple individuals that gathered, found a secluded spot away from the street that they could, start something on fire, and then, plastic will melt and parts of that will catch on fire. It wasn't a ton of what you would consider, like arson-looking damage, but what it did was it totally ruined the pieces. They were compromised to the point where we could not use them again. We couldn't clean them and put them back in place, including, it had an aluminum and steel base that everything sits on. Those were damaged beyond repair as well. So, what certainly wasn't as big as the fire over at Rock Park in 2019 when the backstop was burned down, but it was significant enough that it's going to cause a pretty big headache. We've already looked into replacement parts. The company we bought those from don't make that piece anymore, so they'll either have to fabricate, or we will have to replace it with something similar to be able to make that plate structure whole.
And I'm sure it's in here, and I'm sorry I don't know it right off, but when will we get the function piece for the B? For the splash
It's
pad?
on order. They told us 3 weeks. It's been about a week and a half, so we're hoping sometime in the next week or week and a half.
Okay, great, thank you.
So she told me we did some good. The rest of that fell in.
Yeah, they seemed like they were busy this month.
Yeah.
At all places, it's Sierra Creek. That's their.
Sierra View.
Yeah, that's just out of sight. There.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw that. Okay, no other questions? Correspondence?
We have the letter from LAFCO, and that'll be taken up on item new business on 10E. As usual, LAFCO is looking for people to volunteer to help out again.
Comments or reports from any citizen? I didn't get an email today, so no one had anything that they wanted me to bring up to tonight's meeting. We'll go to number 9, unfinished business. We have none. The next one is under new business A, resolution 604, approving the North Islands Recreation and Park District Impact Fee Nexus Study update. And requesting the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors adopt and implement the updated park impact fees program on behalf of the district board. And this is going to be Blair, right?
Yep.
All Blair. You guys have never done that. He's a nice guy.
Well, thank you, Williams, members of the board again. My name is Blair Oz. I'm with SCI Consulting Group, and really pleased to be here this evening to present the Park Impact Fee Nexus Study update before you. But talking with Larry, my understanding is that many of the board members are new to the board, and so he had suggested that maybe instead of just presenting just this update to the fee program, taking just a little bit more time and giving a broader overview of how this relates to your other funding available for facilities, We'll talk about the community program, and I can just, and then certainly be available for any questions, but at least give you a little bit more than just what's presented in this report. So, before I begin, just a little bit about our firm, SCI Consulting. We are a public finance consulting firm. We're located in Fairfield, California. We've been serving public agencies for about 36 years. And the mission of our firm is when public agencies have budget shortfalls, they need money for capital improvements, new programs, new levels of service, what have you. We help them establish local funding, so taxes, assessments, fees, charges, and help you with the legal process, the financial process, and the political process to establish these new revenues. And so that's really been we love doing that work, because we can, after we do the work, we can see the parks that we've helped build, and the schools that we've helped build, and the protecting reclamation districts, helping with flooding of the Sacramento area and what have you. So that's good. That's really been the joy of our life, is helping you provide the funding to do the great things that you do. All right? I've been with the firm for 20 years, and I'm joined by my consultant, Valerie Flores. I assisted the district with the original establishing of this fee program 10 years ago, and then with this update. And then after this item, we're involved in your community facilities districts, and so I'm going to give a presentation on that as well. So I helped form the two community facilities districts, and Valerie is actually the annual levy administrator for those CFDs, and so we were both partners. We have two resources that can help you directly with these issues. Let me begin with just development impact fees. Park impact fees are one-time monies that are paid at the time of building permit issuance when you go to construct a new home or a new business. So the purpose of these fees are if you have a community and the community is growing, so and certainly North Highlands is. I mean, anytime you have a growing community, you need to grow the infrastructure. So you're going to need new roads, new parks, new schools, fire stations. You might have to expand the sewer treatment facility. There's all that infrastructure. And so the purpose behind these fees are, if the community is growing, who should pay for that infrastructure? Should residents that have been here 35 years, should they be paying for infrastructure that's serving new development? And over the last 30 to 40 years, California public agencies have pretty much said no. That's actually, new development should pay their own way, that should be borne by new development. So very often you have, for any community, and those types of facilities, that types of infrastructure that I was talking about, there are these development impact fee programs, so that when a new subdivision is built and the builder goes to pull a permit for one of those homes, they will pay fees to the school district, the park district, the fire district, the city for police and fire, transportation, roads. And so there's going to be a significant amount of fees that goes into the cost of that new home. And then those monies go to the public agencies, and then they provide that infrastructure. So the Park Impact Fee Program is one of two funding mechanisms that you use to what you can use the term mitigate the impact of new development. So you're responding to new development by having funding available to continue to expand that infrastructure. So So I wanted to just take a few moments, even though this work here is not related to the Quimby program, but these are two important funding mechanisms that are that do work together. That I think it's important if you're presenting one, you should present the other. So imagine you have in your district you have a subdivision of 300 homes. It's planned. It's going to generate approximately 1,000 new residents. Well, your facility master plan says that for every 1,000 residents, you need 5 acres of neighborhood park, neighborhood and community park. So the Quimby program, and this is again a program it's a county ordinance that's imposed on your behalf. That program effectively is called a land dedication or parkland dedication and in lieu fees. So in that example of the 300 unit subdivision, you're going to literally be, because of that ordinance, you're going to be able to say, okay, that subdivision, you need to provide us 5 acres of neighborhood park. You need to just give us, and because of the size, you can actually say, you need to just give it to us. We're going to take it. And you dedicate it to us, you don't pay anything. And so that funding mechanism is really important so that as your district grows, you can keep building more parks or getting the land for those parks, right? Now, just as a little side note, I said, so it's a land dedication and in lieu fees. The in lieu fee is in the circumstance that, let's say you don't have these big subdivisions, but you do have 20 unit subdivision over here and 30 over here, and you've got a lot. Well, you're not gonna require a 20 unit subdivision to dedicate land within that subdivision because it's too small. So what you'll be able to do is effectively charge a fee, and for those smaller subdivisions, you gather those all together, and the amount of money that you'll be able to gather is intended to approximate what you would need to acquire 5 acres someplace else within the district. All right. So I guess I would effectively say this funding mechanism allows you to expand your park land as the community grows. So that's really great. So when you see Quimby, the Quimby program, just first think of land. Okay, that's what the primary goal is. So the question though is, so you now have a mechanism to dedicate that land or receive that land for parks. How do you develop that park? Where's the funding to actually develop that park? And so this is what this program is. And so this program is designed to provide you funding that you gather together from any development, not only residential but commercial. And you gather that together, and that's going to be able to provide development of those parks and a community use facilities. And specifically, this program is actually designed for the new community center here in Freedom, adjacent Freedom Park. So that's so those are what we would call the 2 cost components: is development of the park, which is essentially the ball fields, the playgrounds, just the development of the park. So that's how these 2 funding mechanisms work. So you have land from the Quimby program, and then this comes in and you can develop it, right? And just to complete the picture, so what happens when, so you have the Quimby money gives you the land, these parking impact fees, you develop the park, but what happens in 20 years? The 20 years, you're going to need to replace that playground. You're going to need to replace all the facilities, the signage, and the shade structure. Well, where do you get that money? Most of the time, it has to come from your general fund. But the 2 community facility districts that we established for you, for that, where we'll actually be able to set aside money to be able to have money to replace those facilities as well. So think about Alberta Park. There's a park, there's Cherry Blossom Park that was dedicated to the district. It was constructed with park impact fees, and now there's a CFD that in 15, 20 years, you're going to have monies and you just come in and there it is. So that the residents of Alberta Park are fully mitigating their impact. All the money to maintain that park, to build the park and to maintain the park is coming from Alberta Park. So that's the magic right there. And it doesn't affect your general fund at all. So that's really the magic there. Just drilling down on the action item before you this evening. So this fee program was actually established in 2010. It was actually started earlier than that. And interestingly, it was done in conjunction with 7 other recreation and park districts, right? So technically, your current fee program was actually prepared by the county staff. And a little bit of history, they started working on it for you, and we started working with the other districts. We got together with the county, and we actually prepared the fee programs for all the other 7 park districts. But the county wasn't quite knowing how to do it, so they were already under contract with the district, so we advised them, but they actually prepared it. So I can comfortably say we helped you prepare that. But technically, when you look at the actual study, they'll say the county on it, but we were involved in that as well. So it took them a long time, so we were actually working together on the 8 studies. Okay. But it was interesting at that time, right as we started and then we were in the middle of it, was the housing crisis, the Great Recession. And so we're literally in the middle. We've got all these 8 fee programs. We're proposing approximately $6,000 to $8,000 for every new single-family home. And what happens? The housing market crashes. But we didn't give up. We kept working with the building industry. We kept working with the county, and worked to come to an agreement we kept working to get these approved by the Board of Supervisors and to some degree approved by the area developers. And the reason that we did that, and this is sort of important, the way that we were able to do that, we had meeting after meeting after meeting, and it was getting a little bit tiring because we kept going back and forth. And I actually just one day said, let's change these discussions. What do we agree upon? And so we flipped it. We started listing what we agree upon, and based upon that, we created a document called the Agreement in Principle. And this is an agreement with the development community and the county on how should these fee programs, what should they fund, how should they be structured, some of the requirements. The county didn't, the developers didn't want these to be able to fund what they call Cadillac parks. So we had some agreement on exactly what the fee program would fund in terms of how you design a park, some of those details. But at the end of the day, we came up with that agreement, and then we went back and we modified the fee program to be consistent with that, and then it was approved by the county. And it was a very proud moment. Normally the building industry says, these are new fees that they have to pay. Normally they either oppose it or they just don't support it. They either oppose it or they're just silent about it. But they actually stood up and actually supported it because we've worked so closely with them. The reason I go into detail about that is as we went to do this, so that was done 10 years ago, and now usually after 5 to 8 years or 10 years, it's time to get it updated. And so that's in the county. So the county asked all 8 of the districts to have these fee programs updated. Since we prepared them originally, we updated all 8 of them. But the reason I mentioned this agreement in principle is at the beginning, we worked with the 8 administrators in the county, and there was just general agreement that the updates should maintain those principles. So but I wanted to bring that to you because it's certainly possible. I don't know if I advise it, but it's possible if you could reevaluate that agreement in principle and change the fee programs if we needed to. But that would take some extensive discussions with the county, the district, and the developers and everything else. And so that would take some time. But we thought the easiest path was to just to agree to maintain that agreement in principle. So here's the current fees versus the proposed fees. And I don't have a comparison chart, but your fees are actually the highest of all 8. And it's not that your fee program is different from the other ones. It's just one of the reasons is that you actually have more people living in a single-family home that are in some of the other districts. And so, as one of the factors that determines these fees is how many, because the demand for parks is driven by population, and so if you have more people living in a single-family home than you do someplace else, even though the fee program is relatively the same, you're going to have higher or lower fees based upon just how many people you have in a home. So that's one of the factors there. The law requires that you have not just one fee, but a schedule of fees. Again, because these different land uses have different residential density, different, more or less people per dwelling unit, and then for retail commercial, you have more people for more employees in a retail office establishment than you might have in a retail or an industrial establishment. So that's why you have different rates. The residential fees are per dwelling unit, and then the commercial fees are on building square footage. So, and again, this is only on new construction. So it's only when you construct a new home or a new business. Doesn't have anything to do with renovations. Yes.
So question I had, I was going through this and I was looking, how do they come up with, like, if you look at this single family dwelling, 14.6, how do they come up with that kind of, because I remember when we did Cherry Blossom, I think it was all like 7,200 is what it was back, and I know it's changed over time, but how do they come up with that kind of percentage?
And the math is all laid out in that Nexus study, but let me just give it to you just really, really simply. And again, there's nothing arbitrary about this. The law actually requires is a very elaborate process on how you calculate these fees. And so the fee programs the fees are determined in compliance with the law. But there's 2 cost components. The first one is development of neighborhood and community parks. And so your master plan standard is 5 acres of neighborhood and community parks per 1,000. So we looked at essentially what the cost to develop a neighborhood park and a community park, and then that would serve. That would be 5 acres, and so you sort of do the math, and that comes up with a cost component of cost per capita for developing a park. And then the second cost component is the new community use facility, the community center here adjacent to Freedom Park. We did a calculation, what is new development's fair share of that? So we don't have the ability just to say, well, let's make new development pay for the whole community center, where they only can legally pay their fair share. And so that's based upon the existing level of service that you have for community use facilities for your existing residents. We come up with a ratio. So I don't have the number exactly. That's like 200 square feet per person in the district. You have space like this, right? And so the new one new development's only gonna pay their fair share. So those are the two calculations.
Blair, I think a good example of that, and it's actually in our budget, is that I reached out to you a while back about putting a new play structure at Chardonnay Park, and I was asking you about what share of the impact fees could be used versus general fund fees, and you came back with a ratio of 50%. So when you look at the budget, it says that in the budget, the general fund will pay 50% of that project, and development impact fees will pay the other 50%. And that's basically because the footprint is going to be much larger than the old footprint.
So these are the resulting fees, and the changes are largely due to the update of the number of people per dwelling unit. So we use now the census is now a new census, a new data, and so that's the shift. So actually you're getting less people in apartments, but a little bit more people in single family homes, and so that's largely the explanation between the change there, so yes.
Okay, I had one question, but what you just said just sparked another question
Sure.
there. So let me go to the last point on the census. So this is based on the current census data, because I'm understanding that a lot of that is still being worked out and looking to be released and published, in a couple of weeks and towards the end of
That's
the
right,
semester.
actually, I heard it was released today, so the new
It's
census.
very raw. The kind of rawest format was released today, and it's going to be maybe a couple of weeks before we get some more kind of synthesized
Right.
data.
Without getting into the detail, the census numbers still get slightly updated year to year
Right.
based upon projections and everything else. So they're based upon those latest ones, but the prior one was based upon the prior census and stuff. And so that's the change.
Okay. So, but my original question. So my mind is doing some just simple tracking here, right? And it seems that there's an increase on single-family units, and then I can understand that. There are decreases on multiple family units and decreases on building space, essentially, retail, office, and industrial.
Right.
Now, is that to encourage development of houses over building space or vice versa, or why is there a decrease?
The law does not allow for that. So there's no, there's no arbitrariness in these numbers. It's based upon a mathematical formula based upon what's required by law and how you calculate it. So we're not allowed to say, hey, let's encourage more apartment units, let's lower that, or let's change that. That's not, or let's not charge that category at all, and let's move all the cost. You're not allowed to do that.
So we
it's-
understand.
Yeah.
So can you help me understand then why the decreases? What has happened between time A and time B that now we need less funds from retail, office, and industrial?
So for the residential, that's largely explained from the change in the census. So there's just less people in an apartment unit than there were 10 years ago, or at least the calculations that we used are different. So that explains that. For retail, this affected all 8 of the programs. We recognize that most of the time these programs do not have a park impact fee for commercial development. But we actually created one for Sacramento County, and they are used throughout the state, but it was a little bit more unusual. The methodology needed to be tweaked when we did this update to account for, for example, so the nexus behind why you are able to charge a fee on non-residential development is that when, let's say there's a new Costco built in the district, there's going to be new employees, and those employees are also going to be able to use your parks, but they're not going to be able to use the parks same as a resident. They're only going to be able to use it before work, after work, maybe at lunch. They're going to use it less. So we did that calculation. But what we did this time was we also did an analysis of some of those employees will actually live in the district. and some of them will come from outside the district. So you can't charge for the ones that live inside the district. So we did an adjustment. I think for most of the districts it was about 15%, and that actually ended up lowering these fees across all 8 of the districts. So that was it, basically the explanation there. Now keep in mind, if you were to look at all the 8 districts and the changes in their fees, yours is actually the one that's the highest, and it actually went up a little bit more than everybody else. Some of the districts actually, they're adopting fees that actually went down a little bit, and some of them are just slightly higher. Yours, at least for single family, is actually a little bit higher. The reason for that is that when we established the fee program back in 2010, we also established a provision that the county could automatically adjust them for inflation. So the fees were just adjusted for inflation, cost inflation every year, and so they kept going up and up and up. And so that's why if you look at all of the fee programs, for the most part, they're not really changing dramatically. And that's what that explains that. But for yours, your single family actually popped up higher than others, and then just overall your fees are a little bit higher as well. Keep in mind too, the methodology and approach for all of the districts is the same, but there's different factors. So I would say that they're the same program, but they have different factors that cause some of the fees to be higher or lower. And yours ends up being actually higher. So again, reminder that these fees are only on new construction, so they're not for any renovation costs. If you construct an accessory dwelling unit, those are traditionally like granny units, an additional unit on an existing single-family home. If it's less than 850 square feet, the law actually says they don't pay this fee at all, because the state's trying to encourage that type of development for affordable housing.
How about the apartment conversions to condos?
Apartment conversion to a condominium?
Yeah, would that be considered a renovation, or is that a change from a?
In that case, no, there would not be any change. But if, let's say, you were to have an office that was demolished and then replaced with an apartment complex, that developer would pay the full price of the apartment complex, those fees, but because you demolished an office, they get a credit equal to the fee for an office. Because again, these are called impact fees, and so if you reduce impact, you have to deduct it. If you add impact, then you have to charge them the fee. I know there's a lot of words out here. This is also the Nexus study, but I think it's important to, and Larry spoke to it earlier. It's important to just make sure you understand how to use these fees. Now, the purpose behind the fees, as we talked about, was to expand the park system to serve the growing community. Well, the law also requires that you have to use them that way. So you can only use these fees for developing new parks or adding new recreational facilities in an existing park, but it has to be adding capacity. So like Larry was talking about the example of you can tear down a shade structure, but if you replace it with the same size shade structure, you can't use these fees at all. But if you triple the size of that shade structure, well, you're adding more shade structure capacity, and so you can say, hey, for that project, we can use some of these fees for that. But just so keep that in mind, that is one of the limitations. It's got to go to new parks or expanding parks in existing facilities, like adding tennis courts or adding ball fields or adding shade structures. The word add is a good gem. But Larry will call me periodically with a question, and all the other districts do as well. Hey, I got this scenario, and I run it by me, and we can come up with a a good answer. So sometimes it gets a little bit gray, but I mean, that's the general guidance.
Now, are swimming pools considered kind of like these Cadillac parks? Why were swimming pools excluded from?
Good question. That was one of the compromises with the development community, was that they were trying to manage the size of the fee, and so you typically, so for some communities, you have a fee, part of the fee funds development of the park, community buildings, community use facilities, whether it's a teen center, recreation center, senior center, and aquatics facilities. One of the compromises in 2010 with the development community was that the fee program only include one or the other. And so you can do an aquatics facility, but you can't include a cost for community facilities or back and forth. So that's why it's excluded here. But in the Nexus study, you see the asterisk there. I've got a little footnote that explains that, saying that's to be consistent with this agreement in principle with the development community. But you could change the fee program, take that cost out, and add in an aquatics facility cost component if you wanted to. So that's an important consideration. So keep in mind, so anything having to do with renovation of existing parks and facilities is not fundable. And you can't use it for operation and maintenance or any of your other budget recreation programs or anything like that. So it's put into a separate fund, and it can't be commingled with any other monies. It's got to be used for just that purpose. Now, this is an important, just one little part. Remember when we were talking about Quimby fees, and that the Quimby program gets you the land or the fees to purchase land. One of the little funky nuances with this fee program, which doesn't make sense, but that's how it was written, is that once you have those fees, if you decide you don't want to buy land, you can actually use them to, in the same way as these fees, and renovate existing parks and recreational facilities. And I know that doesn't quite make sense. It's supposed to be just about land, but you could use it in a different way. But so keep that in mind when you're looking at your capital improvement plan. You got these you got other funding sources, but you got these two funding sources. Your Quimby fees have a broad use. The park impact fees have a limited use. So it's going to be important for you to look at that and make sure that you're not expending park impact fees where you are, Quimby fees when you could have been using them. And then lastly, there's every year the district will provide an annual report that just basically says how much was collected, how much was spent in the prior fiscal year, what was the beginning and ending balance, what did you spend it on. I mean, really, like a one-page report. It's very simple.
I usually have it around October, is it, Terry? What's in October? Going to the county about the fees.
Yes, it's October.
And then the 5-year findings report is a little bit more important report, a little bit more detailed. It's an accounting report. I actually assisted the district, and we've actually submitted that report last year, so you now have 4 years before you have to do it again. I advise at least Larry checking with me before you go forward with that report, but that's a report just due every 5 years. So that's pretty much the fee program. Is that? So the action before you this evening is a resolution just to approve the Nexus study, approve the fee program, and then you make a formal recommendation that the county adopted on your behalf. Now, the reason that is that as a special district, you have taxing authority. So like the CFD, you can do that completely on your own. You can call it a general obligation bond measure, tax measure. You can do that all on your own. But this is actually a monetary exaction. It's like a condition of approval of a development project. And so since the county only is the one that has land use authority, they actually can impose these fees on your behalf. So that's the real trick there. So the county can impose, so a city can impose them on their own, but if you're a special district, you have that additional layer. So that's what that resolution is just to take that. So all the other districts, all the other 7 district boards have approved their fee programs. You're the last, and then we'll take all these 8 resolutions. We'll send it to the county board of supervisors, and then they'll get it scheduled in the next couple months to go before for final adoption. And I would represent you and the other districts at that meeting to be available for any questions and then you're all updated.
I have a question. When we went through this, I had Mark in mind too. The directory of the board members, it's the prior one. So was that because we established this when they were on the board, or should that be updated to reflect the current
We
one?
can update that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's. I'll update that and send you. Well, why don't we just send when we go to send it off to the county? I'll send you one, and then the one we send off to the county, I'll just change it a version, and I'll just highlight the facts. Use this exercise.
The second series name, teacher from last name is Smith, then the secretary.
Yep. So Cloris.
So you use your last names?
I'm technically Cloris.
Just depends on
I'm
the
just
day it
saying,
is.
which listed,
Hey, what mood she's in.
it's listed 2 different ways, is what I'm saying.
So unless you have any further questions of Blair.
I do.
Yeah, sorry.
So, okay, the fee structure is what it is. We can't, the formula to come up with the structure is what it is. We cannot make any changes to it.
Well, let me clarify. The study, based upon the costs that are included and the method, it establishes a maximum rates. You could certainly decide to propose something lower if you wanted to.
Okay.
And the county could say, hey, this looks great, but I think we should slash it 25%. They could do that without even talking with you.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. What is our decision-making capacity as it relates to these numbers? And that just answered part of my question. So this is a cap, this is the boundary, and we're saying either we agree that this should be the actual amount, or looking at this cap, we disagree and we want it to be reduced by whatever, and have that discussion in the board.
You have that, so at this juncture, whatever is your recommendation to the board. If you decide to lower the fees, you can make that recommendation, and they would probably accept it. But the other 7 park districts all are proposing the maximum fees that were justified by their studies. So it'd be unusual to do that.
And are there any other reasons that the Board of Supervisors could reject our recommendation?
We don't anticipate that. We actually had, we invited the entire development community, the building industry association. We had a conference call with them, and they had no issues with it, because it's for the most part, the fees are not going up very dramatically. I mean, it's just really an update and stuff. And so and we kept consistent with that agreement in principle. So we don't anticipate much opposition from either the county or the building industry. The county staff have already approved it. They were involved in the preparation of the study, and the developers have somewhat already approved it. So I don't see any reason why the county board of supervisors would, unless they were feeling like they wanted to encourage more development, and this was a burden on new development, and let's slash them. But my practice with the county was that would be a much more elaborate process if they did decide to go down that road. In 2010, they actually conducted a study. Before they adopted these fees, they actually conducted a study to look at all of the development impact fees on a typical single-family home throughout the county, and they evaluated it, and they actually did go back to some of the fee programs and asked them to reduce just slightly. But I don't anticipate that here.
Another question.
Yes.
How often do these updates get done? Is it every 10 years or?
It's usually every 5 to 8 years is our recommendation, but they can go a little bit longer. The fact that your fee program was adjusted for inflation made it last longer. But there's actually a piece of legislation before the state legislature right now, amongst some other things, that will actually require these be updated every 8 years. But it's good practice to update them because the cost, sometimes the demographics of the district change, the cost estimates change, and so it's worthwhile to look at it. And this will actually generate, based upon my projection, which is, again, it's just a projection. I mean, who knows what the future holds for the next 20 years, but it could generate up to $22 million for you over the next 20 years. So it's a significant amount of money. So it's important to make sure you're maximizing it. So I would encourage you to look at it more often than less.
Just put an example, I think I mentioned to the board that the KB Homes bought the Lake to the Envelope project, which is, we had passed the CFD last year on that one, even though we haven't begun collecting funds because they haven't programmed yet. That project alone, based on these fees, are approaching the $3 million mark. And with the, of course, they don't pull up all 270 or 80 permits at one time, so those will be staggered over a few years. So we will benefit from the inflation adjustment to this number as they continue to pull out permits. So the money coming to our district will continue to grow beyond that. So if I can make a recommendation, why don't we, Pat, before we have the board take a vote on this resolution, you have a short CFD. Why don't we do that real quick? There's nothing that you have to take any action on that one. But that way Blair can finish what he's doing, and then we come back and pass the resolution.
So again, we've already sort of talked about this. So this is a funding mechanism that is helps you mean, so the Quimby fees give you the land, the development impact fees help you develop the park, and then these fees help you maintain that park and then replace those facilities going on into the future. This is a special tax. You actually pass this tax and you're levying it under your taxing authority. However, you do need to work with the county for them to place a condition for a new subdivision to mitigate their impacts by forming this. If that makes sense. So if you have a new subdivision, it's the county that, they have these things called conditions of approval. So they have the land use authority, so they'll write up 100 different things that new subdivision needs to do before they'll approve it, give it an entitlement, before they approve that subdivision. And so the way that the other two subdivisions you were able to impose this tax was that the county actually required that developer to do it. And so I would just encourage you, before we get into the details of these two, that as you have new development coming into the district and you get an application, the county says, hey, FYI, there's an application here for a new subdivision. You want to make sure that the county responds with placing the conditions similar to the conditions that were on here, saying, hey, by the way, you need to form or enter into an existing community facilities district for the North Highland Recreation Park District and put that on the list. And then that, before their project's approved, they have to do that. And so that's the only, for these types of fees, that's the only thing that the county's actually involved in. Once they place that condition on that subdivision, you're good to go. So without that, you're going to have to The park in that subdivision, you're gonna have to pay out of the general fund to maintain it, and you're gonna have to replace those facilities after general fund money. There won't be any other money available. So this is really a great thing. It's setting you up to be successful with future development. It's, so keep that in mind.
These developments have to happen in our district, like our boundary district,
Yes.
right? Like that's,
Right, just within your district.
so if we're redistricting and they redraw boundaries and all that,
That would all flow to the new area. Yeah.
Is that happening?
currently Sacramento County is going through the process of redrawing boundaries, but I'm not sure how it affects the parks. It's not advancing.
So, so the first one is Alberta Park, which is Cherry Blossom Park. So it was formed in 2016. It generates about $120,000 a year. Yes?
Because I want to be with you. Are these lots also included in our packet?
They're not.
Okay.
They're not. We just thought it, since you had an item, we were here for the park impact fee.
No,
we thought we'd
it's
just-
just, just wanted to make sure, and we wouldn't all keep flipping through to try to
Yeah.
find these lots. So.
But yeah, so effectively, there's 225 residential lots. The park is about 4 acres, if I recall. It might have changed slightly.
2.75 plus the landscape.
Right. So we projected that $120,000 is what you need to maintain that park and then to replace those facilities over time. That the tax rate will actually grow. The tax rate will actually grow because it'll be adjusted for inflation, because it's going to be, in 10 years, it's going to be much more costly to maintain the park. And so you want to make sure that these monies are accomplishing what they originally intended to do. So that's why the tax rate will slightly adjust over time. So it's maintaining Cherryland Park, the landscape corridors within the park. So annual operation, maintenance, servicing costs of the park, and then any incidental expenses. So the work that we do for you, not only do we help you with the financial analysis, the legal process, and the political process to form this CFD, we're actually been retained as the annual administrator. So Valerie every year establishes, works with Larry to establish the annual budget, establishes the maximum rate, the annual rate, and then she works with the county. She's the liaison with the county assessor's office and the county auditor's office to determine those special tax rates, get them onto the tax bill. And then throughout the year, there's going to be property owners that call and say, what is this? They actually call Valerie, and she will be able to answer all those property questions about this particular tax throughout the year. And then, as Larry had mentioned, at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, there will be an annual report about this tax. So it'll show all the details about the CFD, what was collected, how many homes were charged, how the monies were used, what's the beginning balance, the ending balance, and how much you have left in reserve, and all of those details. And so you'll see that in the fall every year.
Which this year was the first year fully developed.
Right, we had two lots that were being used as staging, and then they sold them as loans this year, so we have all 8.5.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So there's so many park districts which they had this, but because you're a growing district, the county finally, actually, we started working with you 12 years ago, and we advocated, I think we actually advocated for, I think it was this subdivision, to get this condition of approval on the ballot, and then all of a sudden that it went, dead for 10 years. So when it finally arose, I said, aha, that assistance actually worked out. So now we have that relationship with the county. This is common practice. We just need to make sure that continues to be common practice.
One thing I want to point out about the CFD, if we did not have the CFD, as Blair noted, that the annual revenue is about 120 and costs are a little more than 100. If we didn't have the CFD, to maintain the park with that $100,000 would have to come out of the general fund. So it saves us essentially that amount of money. I guess the downside to it is if you're a homeowner in the subdivision is that you're paying twice. You're paying your regular property taxes that someone across the street, pays, but you're also paying the special tax. And we always have to be very careful that we don't upload a lot more money into making that one look very special, while the one down at the park down the street looks like the care that isn't as strong. So it's a balancing act, but we do have that funding source that is dedicated for the maintenance of that park, and it truly saves us a ton of money. Because we have maintained that park we built, we didn't have a CFD, we'd be maintaining it at district cost.
What if any terms attached to that, is it a 20-year CFD, do we have to put a clock on it, or it's just
In perpetuity,
Forever.
unless the board decides that you don't need the money and you're going to use money from someplace else, you can dissolve it, you can lower it. Just like with the development impact fees, these are essentially the maximum rates, but you have the authority to just build the thing that you want or start over with it. I wouldn't advise that, but yeah. But otherwise, it'll just go on into perpetuity. And the reason for that is that it's funding ongoing operations and maintenance. Sometimes these types of taxes fund like the construction of a facility. So once the facility is built, then the tax would go away or be lowered or something like that. But in this case, you're always going to be replacing the facilities in the park, but you're also always going to be maintaining it. So it's just going to go on into perpetuity.
And just one more thing I want to point out. So, within the budget, we talked about it, that the district needs to buy 2 new park maintenance trucks. We can actually charge a small portion of that purchase to the development because we use those trucks to maintain the park. I'll talk to Blair here what percentages we can do, but we are using district taxpayer paid equipment to maintain it, and we charge back. That's how we get paid back for doing that. But it really is a wonderful program. I mean, do you remember, Valerie, was it $12 was the adjustment this year for inflation? So whatever the fee was last year, $500, it was adjusted by $12 for the entire, or like $1 a month.
So we were careful. We hoped, our intention was to design it so that it would be sustainable, so that in 30 years, your costs aren't here and then all of a sudden you're only collecting this. We tried to make it sustainable, so. The next one is the Lakes of Antelope, and that was actually adopted in early 20,
Year.
yeah. So this development has it's proposed 237 lots, 73 lots. It will likely generate about 800 new residents. But the working with a developer in the district, you're not going to actually put a park inside the subdivision. It'll actually be more, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, Sierra Creek Park is the park that you're looking to, and it's close to there, so that's really going to be the park that's serving that subdivision.
So just because you may not know this, but we've been talking about that, we should know in a few weeks about whether we get a state grant for Sierra Creek Park. But we wrote the agreement, the developer agreement, so that in the event that we decided to fund that park another way, that gives us the flexibility of using those funds collected to be used elsewhere in the district. So I remember the developer fought us on that because he didn't quite understand that, if we get another funding source, well, we're collecting this money wanted to get into something with it. He wanted us to say it was going to Sierra Creek Park, but again, we knew the state grant was likely to come our way before the park, that park, or soon as the development began breaking ground.
Yeah, so one of the requirements is that what it's funding, the maintenance of something, it can't be an existing park. It has to be a new park or an enhancement of park somehow. So that's why it's going to the brand new Cherry Blossom Park, and then this would go to, you can't just start, so right now, this CFP is formed, but there's no homes there yet, so you're not levying the tax. And you won't levy the tax until Sierra Creek Park is built, and then now you're having something to maintain. So right now, this is just, we formed it, it's sitting on the shelf, and as soon as that park starts to get developed, we'll put it off the shelf and start charging those homes. Because you can't charge for the maintenance of something that hasn't been constructed.
So the beauty of this is that KB Homes contacted us a while back and said that they had purchased and this has been for sale for some time, purchased development. And so by them purchasing development, it looks like potentially that's going to break ground in a few months, what we're told, that those fees wouldn't generate, the development impact fees, and we wouldn't put CFD to the side for a second because we have nothing to maintain. But those fees that we collect from the development impact fees, we won't be collecting those until, I think it's 50% plus permits have been pulled, is that right? Or we would collect the fees.
Yeah, sometimes
we won't be able to use them.
Yeah, sometimes they strike an agreement about.
I think it's 50% plus one.
Yeah, so there's, so those development agreements have got a lot of detail in them and stuff about that stuff. So some additional conditions beyond those.
Okay, so help string the pearls for me in my mind.
Okay.
All right, so was Quimby activated in this to give us a certain number of acres and or money to buy acres?
Right.
Okay.
Just the parkland, just the
Parkland.
raw land.
Okay. Then to actually build the park in and of itself, those are the impact fees. But we can't get impact fees until 50% plus one of the permits are pulled.
Only for that particular subdivision. So in general, so if there could be just a single family home built somewhere in the district. It doesn't have to be a subdivision, it could be just a single family home. Any time that somebody from the district, somebody from the district goes to the county building department and says, I want to build something new, they pay these fees. It doesn't have to be just, but when you start getting into these larger subdivisions, sometimes there's more provisions because they're trying to work with the developer, so there's a give and take. Because sometimes they need something, sometimes the county needs something, and so there's a give and take. That's those list of conditions so that it all pencils out for both parties. And that would just happen to be a unique one for this one.
And so then after that, we're building the park using the impact fees. The park is now built and we're sustaining the park with the CFD.
Right.
Okay. And there is no sunset on that CFD.
Nope.
Perfect. Okay.
So just like the Cherry Blossom Park, the CFD will pay for the maintenance when it comes to Lakes and Antelope project. The maintenance, well, the CFD will cover that maintenance as well. Otherwise, our district would have to make up that cost. We don't have to. The CFD is a great tool.
Okay.
We should be using that every time going in the future. Every time a new subdivision comes in, we should be using that.
Okay. But I want to throw just a wrench here with that stringing of the pearls. But I want a pool. My community wants a pool. These people want a pool. Everybody wants a pool, right? Now, we can't build a pool with any of the money we just talked about.
Correct.
So the pool would have to be in addition from our general funds.
So if you were wanting to construct a pool, I would recommend that you do a local, a district-wide funding mechanism. So you basically go to all the voters in the district and say, we would like you, we need $100 per year to construct this pool. Would you be willing to pay that? We'll get you a pool. And and then you actually hold a vote of all of the voters in the district. And if they like the idea of a pool and they financially will support what you need, and there's 2/3 of those that actually go to the polls, they agree, then you get a successful election. That's where you get the money. And I'm happy to come back anytime if you really are serious about diving into that. That's also an option as well. So a lot of the other park districts in Sacramento, we have done these park assessments or special tax measures or general obligation bond measures, these district-wide measures that you look to the entire district. So everybody's paying a tax or an assessment, or they're paying their fair share of the debt or something, and then you use those monies to do some great things. So that's another. So this is really just, what we've talked about today is just really addressing the impact of new development. So in California public finance, how you address funding what you want to do for existing development is a little bit more difficult, because it's going to take a vote of all the people, or a vote of all the property owners. But that's possible.
Any more questions on the CFP? All right, I can turn it over to you to cover the resolution.
All right, so now I'm going to need motion for resolution 604, approving the North Highlands Recreation and Park District Impact Fees Nexus Study update, and requesting the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors to adopt and implement the updated park impact fee program on behalf of the district.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Give me one sec. Give me one sec, Chris.
Oh,
Thank you. Just one second. I have nothing.
Okay. Director Hardy? Aye. Director Lewis?
Yay.
Director Ballard? Chairperson Williams?
aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 0 with 4 ayes.
All right. Does everyone take about a 3-minute break, restroom break? And we can get a chance to break things down.
Well, thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie, for that.
Thank you, Valerie.
Yes,
All right, moving on to new business B, resolution 605, which is approval of fiscal year 2021-2022 final budget for North Highlands Recreation and Park District in the amount of $2,538,442.
I won't go through my report. You have a copy of my report. I just want to remind the board that this initially went to the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee as a preliminary budget that was passed by the board last middle of June, I think, of last summer. And then we're coming back tonight to pass the final budget. The final budget is a reflection of the preliminary budget plus any adjustments made in what you've heard me refer to as Period 13. And I believe that Terry would attest that Period 13 was very beneficial to us this year. We generated additional revenues, but it also gave us a chance to address some additional costs that were not really fully aware of at the time when the preliminary budget was passed. And I've listed those in the staff report. The money for the fixed assets for the 2 trucks, $25,000 is the salary and wages for part-time recreation staff for the junior high school sports program. And what I just wanted to briefly talk about, and I talked to Crystal about this. We talked about adding some more money into the budget for the board, for trainings, conferences, and some money for mileage. And so that's what this additional, I think it's, what is it, $5,000? $3,000 will address. And I very much encourage the new board members, if they can, to go to that new board member training. I know that's not the exact title, but that's what it is. You will benefit so much from it, the district will benefit from your experience of going through there. And if for some reason we didn't have enough money, we'll find the money to make it work for you. But anyway, those are the main changes in the budget. Revenues were up higher than we thought from the preliminary budget. Expenditures were, you notice that there's a significant increase of a little more than $500,000 in expenditures. But just to put that in perspective, that's 2 full-time positions that were not in last year's budget. Cost of living index COLA for the employees, an increase for services and supplies for the 3 divisions, the fixed assets, the trucks, and also all the play equipment and all the new park equipment. All that stuff is built into that. So it sounds like it's a whole lot, but it's actually what I expected it to be. And it also includes a $150,000 contingency fund, which we talked about before, that the district can use in the case of an emergency for unplanned expenses that we did not know at this time that may occur between now and the end of the fiscal year. One thing I do want to add to this, just to share with the board, I'm not asking, this is not included in any of the financial decisions you'll make tonight. But we have spent some time with a neighborhood, Bridgepoint, and also looked at, you remember we put some money aside in the budget, which you've approved for Chardonnay Park to oversee, bring the turf back up. They're both in not the kind of condition that we like to see, but the parks are both very, very old, and Bridgepoint, it's actually used for soccer and for the school. The school uses it primarily as their PE, so it gets beat up a lot. So I would like to come back to the board at mid-year adjustments in December and seek funding from you to completely renovate Ridgepoint Park, Chardonnay Park, and it's going to be, it'd be a private firm that we would contract with, and the price is extremely reasonable. For 2 years, what was it for both of them? $15,000? And we already have $5,000 budget already. And it will help bring the turf back up, overseeding. Scott talked to the principal at Ridgepoint. We will work out the details, but where they can use part of the field, where we close off half part of the field so the seed gets a chance to grow. We can't start this until the end of December anyhow because it's too hot and we have the water issue. We shared that with some of the neighbors who live near that park. In addition to that, I would be coming back to you looking for funding for a new playground for Bridgepoint Park.
You're talking about because the small one.
The small one, the one in the corner. And then we would add some other park improvements to that. So it's not part of this budget, but I wanted to bring it to your attention so you're aware of it in case the community, they're out there, I'm sure they want to make sure that I brought it to your attention. Because I told them, I said, we couldn't add it to the budget now, but we certainly could make the adjustment mid-year. The other thing I wanted to add to this, which would not require a budget adjustment in this fiscal year, we don't know the outcome of Sierra Creek Park project, but this will be part of this discussion we have about prioritizing our projects. We talked about starting the park master plan in next year's budget. I would suggest, again, no funding right now would be required, but we start the master planning process earlier than next July. We wouldn't incur any cost right away. The cost will be staggered over as they produce the workflow. But if need be, if we ran into that, we could use a contingency fund to offset that cost and then budget the full cost or the remaining cost in next year's budget. The reason I say that is it's going to take several months for us to put out RFPs to various companies that do master planning, and that would require us to go that process, set up interviews, and make a selection. And if we time it right, we make the selection just as the new budget next year is approved, and we can start right now, as opposed to then having a 2 or 3 month lag time after that. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay, so those are not financial decisions that you need to make tonight. I want to bring them to your attention. They will come back to you as a mid-year adjustment consideration in December. I think the communities in Chardonnay and Ridgepoint Park will be very happy. And it gives us a chance to start the master plan earlier so we can do the legwork up front, which is no cost because we're doing the RFPs and those types of things. And then have a firm selected just so we can start as soon as the new budget process is approved for next year. So that'd be like, really, it's only like 9-10 months from now.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll bring that to your attention, but that's kind of in addition to this budget. There'll be some other costs out there, but we did add to the reserves. We do have the contingency fund, and I think we will have sufficient funds to address these issues as we move forward.
Yeah, Larry, to that point, something that would be helpful to me is if you could sketch out a timeline for the master planning process. You know, how long does it generally take?
That's actually part of the workshop that we're going to have. That's going to be included in that.
Okay.
All the projects are going to have timelines attached to them, so you can see some will be short, some will be extended over several budget periods.
We can see where there's overlap, we can see where.
You can see where Scott and I are going to start deciding who's going to run away first. Because,
All right, thank you. That's helpful.
so anyway, Pat, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, so I need a motion.
Second.
No,
No.
go. You go first.
Who's motion?
Second. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Terry?
Director Harding? Aye. Director Reynolds?
Yay.
Director Van
Aye.
Chairperson Williams?
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4-0 with 1 absent.
All right, resolution 606. Approval of the fiscal year 2021-2022 appropriations limit schedule.
Does anybody have any questions about an appropriation limit schedule is? This comes up every year. This only took me 2 seconds, Pat, if I just to share it with the board so that I find it. Okay, so just so you know, the appropriation limit is required by law that we do this every year. 1979, Prop 4 was passed, established an appropriations limit on the state and most types of local government. The appropriations limit is based on appropriations from state tax revenues. If the state has revenues above the limit for over 2 consecutive years, the state constitution requires that the state split the excess funds between taxpayer rebates and or spending on schools. The appropriations limit in 2021-22 is $7.5 million, and the North Highlands Recreation budget is well under that limit, so the appropriation limit does not affect our district because our budget is not greater than the appropriations limit. It's substantially less. So anyway, it's a little complicated, but it's based on state tax revenues and how the money is split. It doesn't come back to us.
Is this something that you need to vote? I so moved.
Go ahead.
So,
I move to accept the.
good motion. Thank you.
Who's the second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Terry?
Director Harding? Aye. Director Reynolds?
Aye.
Director Van
Aye.
Chairperson Williams?
Aye.
Motion passed for a vote of up 4-0 with 1 absent.
All right, resolution 607, approval of the fiscal year 2021-2022 final budget for Alberta Park, North Highlands Recreation and Park District Community District number 2016-01. Sherry Lawson.
Before the board takes a vote on it, I just want to add that you heard Blair say earlier that funding from this will also be set aside every year for equipment replacement at the park. This year, we are dedicating $20,385 to the equipment reserve, but we also have a remaining $60,000 in contingency. I highly doubt that we will spend that, So anything we don't spend will roll over into the reserves for next year. Approximately, I think we will need right around $300,000 to $400,000 in 10 to 12 years for equipment replacement. So this will get us well on our way.
Okay. I can't find the resolution 607 in my packet. Can somebody help me out? Not saying it's not in here. Maybe I got it myself. Okay, that's fine. You know what, I'm used to the bills being the last thing on here. Okay, perfect. 606. Yep. Thank you very much.
You know, we'll give the people a chance. You're good. You're good.
Let me see what the verbiage is. I move to accept the budget for Elbert Park in the amount of $104,148. Say it like that.
Just say that, Chris, all you have to do is refer to the resolution number.
What is it called, resolution? Oh,
Yeah,
607.
all the information's in there.
Thank you, yes,
Save you from having to read all of that.
appreciate that. So I move.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Terry?
Director Harding,
Aye.
Director Reynolds,
Yay.
Director Bell,
Aye.
Chairperson Williams.
Aye.
Motion passed as voted 4-0 with one absent.
All right. Line item E. Sacramento LAFCO nomination of special district representative, elections for special district, office number 7, and alternative special district commissioner for office number 6 and 7. Larry.
At this point, we're looking to see if there's anyone on our board that's interested in this.
I am.
Which one?
Office number 7.
Okay. And I wanted to pull it up here because I think there's some,
A resume has to be attached.
yeah.
Sure. I can, should I get this to you, Terry, and you send it in?
Yes, I will send it in, give me a resume.
So what we have to do first is it says that to be valid, a nomination must be made by a majority of the board. So Pat, if,
I'm going to nominate both then.
there you go.
You
I
know.
accept the nomination.
So anyone else want to volunteer? Any further discussion on it?
Go.
Oh,
Do we second it?
Who's second that?
Did you?
Oh,
Second.
Go, both seconds?
Lottie second. So we have to take a vote now?
Yes.
Director Harding. Aye. Director Reynolds.
Yay.
Director Bell.
Aye.
Chairperson Williams.
Aye.
The vote passed by 4-0 with one absent.
Okay.
I will need your resume as soon as possible so I can get this in, okay?
I think there's a deadline, is it, on there that when everything has to be turned in?
It's still coming up, but yeah, I'll get it.
I'll leave that between you and Terry to figure that out.
I payment of the bills, I sent an email, it answered my $50,000 question, got answered.
49,356?
That was it, that was, wow. Anyone else have any questions about expenditures? It's been good.
Great business students.
It's been good. Okay.
Motion?
You making a motion, Lottie? Good man. Lottie making a motion.
Motion to approve the bills?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Director Harding.
Aye.
Again, Director Reynolds.
Yay.
Director Bell.
Aye.
Chairperson Williams.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0 with one absent.
Wait, strike that down. I'll give it to you.
ready, huh, to adjourn.
I'm,
I'm just kidding.
this is one of the longest ones I've been in.
Hey, before you adjourn, sir, before you adjourn, Larry, I know that you and your family had to evacuate. I'm glad to see you guys are healthy and strong. Is there anything that we can do for you to help your family with?
Just let me know your address so I can drop off all 14
Listen, I got two. I'm willing to take two more, but that's it. My neighbor's going to.
Well, thank you for asking, but it all works out well. There's a lake firehouse called Rollins Lake. The fire burned in Rollins Lake and then went this way. We're on the other side of Rollins Lake. As Steph knows, when I left the office, it said it was 2 to 5 acres. When I got up to Auburn, it was 1,000 acres. When I got home, it was over 2,000 acres. So we got out of Dodge, and that's the negative of living where we live. But the positives outweigh it, and you just got to be prepared for things like this. So thank you for asking.
And please don't forget the staff. Appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Meeting adjourned.
Seriously?